Willkommen, howdy, and welcome to a chilly United Kingdom, where we are having a look at this behind me, and this is a Mercedes G Wagon. We've just finished working on magic on it, and we've transformed this from an old military piece of equipment into a more of a civilianized sort of road vehicle. This is a 1990s 240 or 240 GD. Has a normally aspirated diesel engine, and this used to belong to the army in Singapore. Now, if I give you a little bit of background about what this used to be, and then we can have a closer look at the works we've done on it and how we've brought it up to this sort of standard. Okay. So in Singapore, in about the mid-80s towards the late 80s, they started purchasing these, and they had different types of G Wagon. They had a Scout, as it was called, and that was a very basic G Wagon, which this incidentally was at the beginning. So there was no windscreen on it, there was no windscreen wipers, there was no roof, there was no frame to hold a roof, there were no doors. It was really quite basic. These were imported into the UK, so there was a number of them, sort of 10 to 20 maybe, and they sort of filtered their way down onto the private ownership market. Now, this was used, as I said, by the Singaporean army, so they're called the SAF, and I think they designate them as MB240s. If you know anything different, then do let me know in the comments below, but yeah, I think we are looking at a MB240. Let's have a look. There's a few things still that we've actually taken off of this, because we wanted to sort of simplify the look. We wanted to push it towards a more sort of civilian finish. So we've taken some of what I would describe as the clutter. Well, to me, being sort of a military enthusiast, they were quite the interesting bits, but we've actually sort of put those to one side. They've not gone anywhere, we've hung on to them, but they're not here anymore. So when this came out originally, it would have had, at the beginning, if you're looking at it, a straight bar across the front of the grille. Now, the reason for that bar was, at the bottom here, on the bumper, you can see these two attachments, and these two here would have been where an A-frame sat. So it was the bottom of this A-frame, and that A-frame had a long sort of side nearly that came up and bent over, and that was because not having a windscreen, if these were used in combat, there was the old piano wire trick. For those people that don't know about it, that is when you see people jollying around without any windscreen, so there's no protection at the front of the vehicle, they used to put up a piano wire, and that used to just catch the heads of the drivers and pop, off they came. So that was some horrible lessons learned in Germany in the Second World War, with Americans driving around in jeeps with their windscreens down. So hence why you usually see sort of an upright stanchion at the front. So that's why this had a bar on there. Obviously had the blackout lights as well. They used to carry the weapons just behind you on the B frames, so that meant that there really wasn't any doors that were going to be fitted, because the guns went in there. So obviously we've now put doors on there, and also there was no windscreen for greater visibility. The sort of downside of not having that windscreen is the fact that sort of water's got in over the years, and one of the main things that happened with this one is the fact that the heater stopped working, and that really was water ingress into that heater mechanism, and then it just stopped working. So we fixed that, but to do that, oh my goodness, that was a lot of work. The entire dash had to come out. Now, when the dash was out, we were able to fix it, but then we found it wasn't heating up, and so we started exploring, and actually in the engine cooling system, or you would call it heating system, because it's going through to the blower to keep you warm inside, we found a lot of debris, so we had to clean that out, and then we've got that fluids flowing again, and we changed all the fluids, and now the thing is working really, really well. So that keeps us toasty on days like this. The windscreen is a post-market construction, so it's slightly different than you would see on the usual G Wagons, or you actually see on any of our Peugeot P4s. If you're interested in what is a Peugeot P4, basically it's one of these but French. Here's some links down here and some pictures up there to some of the videos that we've done rescuing those from France. So do have a look at those, they are quite interesting. No windscreen wipers, so they've put on, I think it's sort of a Land Rover series elements in there, and we need to get those reinvigorated and get those working again, because they're just not working very well, and the windscreen wipers are sort of coming all over the place, so we need to get those back on straight. So that's a little job that we're going to do today. So that's the final thing on this before we're able to sort of like release it into the wild. The Singaporean Jeeps as well had some boxes in the back, a couple of jump seats, and that was really because they like to have their GPMG up on the roll cage up on the top, and so they needed to keep the ammunition and the parts for the gun, and they were held in a big box that was in at the side in the back. So apart from that, the rest of it's pretty straightforward, and therefore it was great to work on because we were able to get all of our parts off of the tin. We've kept the bridging plate, the number 3, so these numbers were on the front to indicate what the weight of the vehicle was, roughly to the nearest ton. So therefore it was going to cross bridges, or hence the bridging plate, or if it was going to be loaded onto a train or onto a lorry, then they knew sort of the weight of these, so they could say, right, that lorry can take 9 tons or 10 tons, so we can have 3 of those vehicles on the back. So we've kept that as a sort of a nod to the fact that it was a military vehicle to start with. We have taken off the blackout lights, and there were some outside marker lights. We've included those marker lights back into the headlamps, so you basically got sort of a running light back inside of that headlamp, which sort of brings it up to more of a sort of civilian spec. In the Singaporean army, or possibly in civilian hands after it came out, you will look at the photographs and say, well, that doesn't look too bad, Baz. I mean, why did you need to go, what's all the fuss about, all the work that you've had to put into this? The reason is it was hand painted. Now, you can't really see that in the photograph, but there was just layer upon layer upon layer of paint that had been applied with a brush, and of course it had gone on really thick and it had run, and in fact in places it was like the side of a candle. There was just paint running, like it had been poured over the thing. So when we got the top coat off and we got into that, we found that it hadn't gone off. It was still sort of live paint. Must have been oil-based. It got sealed inside and it just hadn't hardened. So therefore, as soon as we started sanding it, it was like sanding treacle. It was just not coming off. In fact, you could, in some places, get a scraper and scrape it off. So the decision was made that we had to take this back to bare metal. That was a lot of work. There was just seriously hundreds of hours, as people who restore cars must understand, getting this back to bare metal. We didn't want to use chemical strippers or peelers. We just went with sort of hand sanding and went through it. When we got underneath, then we started finding some of the problems. Now, I don't know why, but on this particular vehicle, this panel here at the top and the same on the opposite side was absolutely filled with pock marks. So there were sort of like holes like this that had been pushed into the metal, and in fact in one particular place it actually gone through. We've seen that before in one other vehicle that we've restored, similar to this, and that was actually bullet holes. Now, I don't suggest that this has ever been shot at, but maybe, who knows, some idle moment on some training grounds, someone decides to have a few pot shots at it, but there really is quite a lot of dents, but only at this area and on the top. On the other side. So the theory that we're working on is they used to get in and out over the side of this particular Jeep, and it was just their kit, throwing the kit up, throwing the boxes up, throwing the ammunition up, etc., and it kept hitting the side of the vehicle and creating a bit of an issue. So whoever had it either during the army or immediately afterwards decided to put filler on there, and that was 1 centimetre of filler. That's really quite thick. Problem putting on filler of that thickness, sorry, so-called my lips have started seizing up. The problem with the filler being that thick is just flexing of the body. When the body flexes, then the filler doesn't, and eventually it cracks. And when it cracks, that allows water in. As you can imagine, water behind filler just sat against the body and started rusting it from the inside out. So we had to take all that filler off. That took us back to these pock marks, which we've had to try and heat and straighten out, and then we've gone back with the tiniest skim of filler on the top, because we think that this vehicle should show its history. If it's got a ding, leave the ding in there. Obviously if it's got rust, don't leave that bit. We'll replace that. As you can see, we had to do a bit in the side. So there was a certain amount of welding. There were some holes in the floor as well that we had to deal with. But on the whole, it was in really good nick, and I think it simply was because it's been in a hot climb, which wasn't being exposed to salt or sort of winter roads, etc. So it really has lasted quite well. So we're really, really pleased with it. We'll just have a quick look inside, and then we'll just wrap up this video because we need to go on to our next project, which is sat inside, and I've got Ashley to pause his work on it because he's making such a racket. So we need to get back on with that. So let's have a look inside while we're here. So what we've done is these are replacement seats. So these are Mercedes seats, so they're really nice finishing touch in leather. You can see, unlike sort of the Peugeots that we usually deal with, we've actually got a glove box that actually closes and locks, and we've refurbished the inside here, taking it back to sort of its black original finish. You see a nice little touch here is the map reading light. So as this opens, then you can actually see the lights on underneath, so you can read a map if you tactically need to do so. On the floor we've put on some link mats. They're really good because they allow the floor to breathe, so it's not trapping water underneath. Last, you can see here, it was designed to take a windscreen. So this is the windscreen retention attachment. This used to go up to the surround, but as I said, this has been fabricated afterwards and that bit's been missed out, but we don't need to worry because there's actually a bar up here. There we go, it runs all the way along and that just holds the windscreen in position. So those of you who recognise the G Wagon will recognise all of this immediately. Done a few little things we've had to do to bring it sort of into the 21st century. So we've put in a couple of USB ports in there, a couple of charging points, because everybody wants to charge their phone in or their sat nav to find out where they're going. So we are good to go on this. We just need to sort, as I said, those windscreen wipers, and it's good to leave. One quick look in the back, because we've made some changes there. Right, what we've got in here, now before we had a big sort of equipment box over here on the right, and we had a small jump seat behind it, and we had a jump seat over on the left hand side as well. So that was two sort of singular seats. They weren't really what we want this vehicle to be used for, which is just having fun in the sun. So we've put in two new bench seats. So these are out of the Peugeot P4s, but they went in quite easily. We actually found pre-drilled holes and captive nuts already in part of this bodywork, so it shows that these and the French P4 bodies are incredibly similar. So we've put in for now just some inertia belts for any passengers that get them back. We've put in some nice new rubber floor in there, because it'd be a shame to sort of scuff up this lovely blue if you're sort of jumping in and out with your dog. A few sort of leather accents we've put on as well, just to sort of tidy things up, make it look smart, and we're sort of good to go. So there we are, the G Wagon is finished. Golf Blau, or Golf Blue. Oh, it's actually grown on me greatly. So looking really nice now. Thank you very much to everyone that's come down and helped with this. And I'll show you again tomorrow in the daylight, one quick glance around it, and then we need to crack on with our next project, the Peugeot P4. So, ta-ta for now.